Thank you all for coming. And welcome to the May meeting of the Dallas County Master Gardener Association. I'm going to start with a shout out to the garden tour team. So
yes.
Thank you all. Amazing job. That was a lot of hard work. We greatly appreciate you. We have a cultural awareness program coming up June 20th, 21st, and 22nd. There are 3 sessions. Take a look at, mark your calendar when it comes out. And I highly encourage you to attend one of these 3 sessions. When you sign up on Eventbrite, it'll ask for like a $21 fee, but that fee is waived with the discount code Dallas Extension MG Volunteer 2024. So all that will be in the mark your calendar notice. And we're going to have these sessions to identify biases, prejudices that all of us have, and recognizing our own, and then how we can make others feel welcome. Excuse me. So again, I highly encourage all of you to sign up for one of those sessions. They are June 20th at 6 p.m., June 21st at 1 p.m., June 22nd at 9 a.m. So lots of variety there, and they are presented by Chris Parker from the Purdue Extension Service. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Jake Poinsett. Come on up, Jake. So Jake is an awesome guy. And if you have not been to the Trinity Valley Audubon Center, I highly encourage all of you to attend. It's an amazing educational experience. The grounds are beautiful, and it's so much to offer. Thank you, Jake. So, Jake is the program manager at the Trinity River Audubon Center in Dallas, which is down way off Buckner. Before working for the National Audubon Society, Jake was a park ranger for the Texas Parks and Wildlife. He was a park ranger for the South Carolina Park Service. You love those southern cultures. And he was a park ranger for the National Park Service. Jake is originally from the Pine Barrens area in the wonderful Garden State of New Jersey. Love that state. So Jake is a bird nerd who also loves all things prairie. So welcome, Jake.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you for the invite. I'm super happy to be here. My name is Jake Poinsett. I'm the program manager at the Trinity River Audubon Center. Thank you. Show of hands, who's been there before? Anybody? Awesome. Many of us. It's a really special place. It's a beautiful, biodiverse wildlife refuge, but also used to be the largest illegal dump site in Texas history. So, yeah. Thanks to the local community, they said enough is enough, they took action, and they sued the city. And they won the case, and that's why we're there. So I work for the National Audubon Society, and our mission is to protect birds in the places they need for today and tomorrow. At the Audubon Center, as the program manager, we do so through environmental education, habitat restoration, habitat conservation, advocacy, speaking up for birds, and I like to take my nerdiness on the road sometimes, like we're doing right now. But today we're going to be geeking about grass in particular. This is me at my house. It's a little passion project that we got going on where we removed all the plants that were on the back 40 of our little acre and turned it into a prairie. And this was the initial seeding of all the grasslands coming up. So I was pretty excited about that right there. All right, so I mentioned that I work for the National Audubon Society. And the name now Audubon is synonymous with birds. But how did this organization come to be? Thanks to 2 women in conservation, Mina B. Hall and Harriet Hemingway. They're sick and tired of plume hats, which is high fashion at the time of the 1800s, where people would shoot a bird, like this great egret, to put a feather in a cap, just one feather in a cap. And for the great egret specifically, it was the aigrette feathers they were after. Those beautiful wispy white feathers there. So Mina B. Hall and Harriet Hemingway decided to organize tea parties to talk about alternatives. How can we appreciate these birds without making them go extinct? This became so popular that the first Audubon Society started, and eventually the Audubon Model Law was passed in 1901, which banned all plume hunting. So all because of their grassroots efforts to make change. And they named it the Audubon Society to pay homage to John James Audubon, who was an illustrator who drew birds. And thanks to those 2 women in conservation, this organization was founded. And today, fast forward, we're still a leader in conservation through education, habitat restoration, advocacy, all the things that birds need, because birds don't speak like we do, so we gotta speak up for them. So Mina B. Hall and Harriet Hemingway were in Massachusetts. That's where it originated. And now you can see we're all over. We're all over the place. And there's many different ways to get involved with Audubon. Through the different nature centers that we have. There's 3 in Texas. Through the different chapters. There's multiple chapters throughout Texas where you can become a volunteer to learn about bird habitat, go birding, go bird watching, do a variety of things that are bird specific. And then we also have lots of state chapters where we work on different programs that are to better birds' lives and the habitats they depend on. And each program is divvied up by flyway, just like how birds migrate. So the problems in the central flyway can be very different than those in the Atlantic flyway. So we try to focus on what the birds are needing in our area. And then more specifically, here's Audubon in Texas. We're all over the place, all over the map. Audubon in Texas started because of the importance of the barrier islands along the Gulf Coast. Is anybody a big birder? Big birder? Nice. So spring migration, we're towards the tail end in Texas right now, but 1 out of every 3 migratory birds passes through Texas in the spring. It's amazing. Millions and billions of birds just passing through Texas. Some will stop here and spend their summer. Some are just popping in for a little bit to go further north. So they're using the habitats in Texas like Buc-ee's. It's like the Buc-ee's for birds. We all stop at Buc-ee's on a road trip, right? But a lot of these birds, the first place they stop is along the Gulf Coast. So the importance of these barrier islands are for both for birds and for people. So it's to stop the storm surges, but also provide habitat for these birds. In Texas, I mentioned we have 3 Audubon centers, the one I work at, the Trinity River Audubon Center, there's the Dogwood Canyon Audubon Center in Cedar Hill, and also our friends down in San Antonio, the Mitchell Lake Audubon Center. And each center is just a gateway for others to build their own relationships with nature. At the Audubon Center I'm at, it's the Great Trinity Forest, which is the largest urban bottomland hardwood forest in the country, right here in Dallas. That's a mouthful, but 6,000 acres, that's about 6,000 football fields. Wow. Unbelievable. But we're here today to talk about grass. Yes, the best plant, the most superior plant. And Texas is a grassland state. Most of Texas's habitats are some type of grassland. 60 to 70% of Texas's landmass is some type of grassland, historically. Much of it has been altered or changed, where the plant communities have started to disappear, but this is what our area of Texas used to look like. Breathtaking. Let's all take a moment and just stare. This is Climber Meadow. It's a beautiful remnant of the Blackland Prairie that we still have in North Texas. It's one of the few. So we are in the southern Great Plains. And if you look at Texas here, you can see, like I said before, most of Texas's plant communities are some type of grassland. And by definition, a grassland is a habitat that's dominated by mostly grasses. Grasslands can also be savannas, where there's still trees scattered about, but most of the plant community is some type of herbaceous, non-woody plant, like grasses. So we have the post oak savannas in Texas, we have some of the longleaf pine savannas in East Texas, the oak and juniper savannas of Central Texas, but most of the grasslands in the Great Plains region where we are prairies. And a prairie is a type of grassland that's mostly grasses and forbs. Very, very little woody plants within that plant community. The more east you go, we have our tall grass prairies. And the central part of the Great Plains is our mixed grass prairies. And then the more west you go is the short grass prairies. Because of the amount of precipitation they get, in turn, creates taller plants. So we are in the tall grass prairie area of the Great Plains, the southern Great Plains. But these plant communities, they evolved, changed over time to rely on these ecological disturbances that keep a prairie a prairie. So there's oftentimes discussions where a prairie is not really a climax plant community. I think it is, because people also evolved with prairies. So lots of Native Americans would set prescribed fires to stimulate new growth, to bring bison to munch on the new growth, and then they would rely on the bison. So just like us, everyone here, we're all part of the greater ecosystems we're a part of, right? So the wildfires were disturbances that evolved with the prairie, as well as the large grazing herbivores like the bison. So all these things keep a prairie, but when these ecological disturbances disappear, so does the plant community. All right, so this is a cool picture of a grassland-dependent bird in the Blackland Prairie. Can anybody spot the bird? It's got some serious camouflage. That's one of my favorite birds. I promise this won't turn into just a bird presentation, but birds and plants, they go hand in hand. That's the LeConte sparrow, and it's one of the wintering species that's found here in the Blackland Prairie, and this was taken at a site in Ellis County. Beautiful, beautiful bird. But our ecoregion, the Blackland Prairie, is a type of tallgrass prairie, like we mentioned before. Originally, it was from the border of Oklahoma and Texas all the way down towards San Antonio. But today, less than 1% of its ecosystem remains intact. It's because DFW is doing this. Keep going. And and there's no stopping in sight. So a lot of these plant communities were altered because of human involvement, because of conversion of monocultural crop farms, because of overgrazing from cattle. So a lot of these ecosystem services are no longer intact, and in turn the plant community starts to disappear. But the way that this place evolved, which created up to 12 million acres, is because of all those things decaying and passing away into the soil, making it really nutrient rich. All the bison go into the bathroom all the time, making it even more nutrient rich. All the fires that are adding to the nutrients. So that's why we're called the blackland prairie, because of that thick, really rich soil that took eons to create. And also because of the annual precipitation we have, we're in the tallgrass prairie. We get about 40 inches of rain annually here in North Texas. Originally, these prairie fires would happen every 2 to 5 years, depending on an area. And now it's still a good habitat management practice to have prescribed burns. We can't do that at the Audubon Center because next door is the legal landfill that was created since it was an illegal landfill. Fire and methane mix too well, so we don't have prescribed burns there. I'll have a shout out for volunteering later on, but that was my first initial plug. And because of all this, there's so much biodiversity in these prairie plant communities. There's some of the most biodiverse habitats on the planet. And diversity is the name of the game. That includes our habitats in nature. If there's many, many different species interacting together, the more successful it is. And in the Blackland Prairie, over 600 species of plant can be found in a healthy plant community. That's unbelievable. In 1 square foot, you can find about 45 plant species. You could do this all day long in the prairie and just find something new, nonstop. And it creates this habitat for a variety of animals. There's so many grass-independent organisms that depend and have evolved with these plant communities. So again, it's super important to have these plants where we live, where we recreate, where we go. And most of those plants are grasses. Yes! Grasses galore. This is a beautiful picture of Cedar Hill State Park. They have this really awesome Talala Trail. That's a really great example of the biodiversity of the Blackland Prairie. It's a great place to go explore, get some fresh air, see all the beautiful things that thrive in this plant community. And when I say grasses, I don't mean this grass. So this is not biodiverse at all. That's a desert. All right, so what is a grass? Let's break it down. Grasses are monocots, so when they are germinating from their seed, there's one stem coming out of the embryo, and they're in the order of graminoids. So graminoids are grasses and grass-like plants, like grasses, sedges, rushes. There's a fun little rhyme that I think a lot of us probably know about how to identify grasses, sedges, and rushes. Sedges have edges, rushes are round, grasses have nodes all the way to the ground.
Say it again.
Sedges have edges, rushes are round, grasses have nodes all the way to the ground.
I don't know that.
And so those are all graminoids. They're all in the same order. But grasses are in a different family, Poaceae, and there's nearly 800 different genera and around 12,000 different species of grass. They're found on every continent. They're the most successful plant, and they're also extremely important for a variety of organisms, including us. So a lot of the bread we eat, a lot of the beer we drink, a lot of the cereal, a lot of this stuff, that's all grass related too. So grass is a superior plant. This is a really awesome grass found in the wetter areas of our plant communities. This is bushy bluestem. I think for me it's easy to identify because it looks like the old Barbasol like lather on when you're going for a shave. So when it's flowering, that's what it looks like to me. Easy to identify. But it loves to have wet feet, and its common name I think is now being changed to maritime bluestem because it's found in these wetter habitats. So that's what makes a grass. But this also makes a grass. They're herbaceous, so these non-woody plants. And they have some features that are unique and specific to grasses. These jointed hollow stems, and you can see that there's nodes up top there that go all the way down the stem, and a node is kind of like the elbow towards the joint of the grass. That's a good way to identify it. There's many different types of inflorescence types in grasses. So inflorescence is like the collection of flowers. Some 3 really common ones are the raceme, the panicle, and the spike. So here is a panicle type example of an inflorescence where its flower arrangement kind of looks like a big fireworks explosion. A lot of grasses have that pretty pattern. A lot of native grasses and also some invasive grasses. Johnson grass comes to mind. It's my worst enemy. I have nightmares about it. But it has a beautiful panicle. It really does. I gotta say that. It's true. And grasses are so fascinating for so many different reasons. One of them is that it's easy to tell how old a tree is when you cut it down, and for some species you can count the lines, it'll tell you how old it is. For old growth grasses in a prairie, we have no idea how old they could be. No idea. Because these root systems are not woody. They're herbaceous. They don't have that wood tissue where we can determine how old it is. Some of these grasses found in places like Clymer Meadow could be hundreds, almost thousands of years old, and we have no idea. Which makes it even cooler that these ancient creatures are living with us. And we're able to see that because these grasses either reproduce via rhizome or stolon above the ground. So rhizomes are like these horizontal stems that produce new growth to allow the new growth out of the bunch grasses to come up. So even if the parent stock starts to pass away, new growth still continues to live on. So a really cool old growth grass is something special. Because of those powerful roots, there are so many ecosystem services that these native grasses provide us. It goes on and on and on and on and on. There's turf grass, really not much going on, not really beneficial at all. But then we have so many deep, important root systems for these native grasses. They provide oxygen. We all need that to breathe. Prairies are better at sequestering carbon than any other plant community because most of their biomass is underneath the ground. So they're absorbing potential pollutants from the atmosphere and stashing it deep underneath the ground. And even if these plants are munched on, or mowed, or burned, all that carbon, most of it is staying underground because it's not being released into the atmosphere, since most of its biomass is growing underneath. It also helps prevent erosion, helps hold on to the soil for dear life, and it mitigates flooding. It gives water somewhere to go. So all the plant communities that thrive around the floodplains of the Trinity River, they've all adapted to rely on that seasonal flooding that happens when the river leaves its banks. And these prairies become recharged because of that, and also it gives that water somewhere to go, instead of going into our homes where we work, where we recreate. So a lot of these prairies are mesic prairies that need that seasonal wetness, that create these depressions, these gill guys, that will stash and store water and stash it underneath the ground afterwards. And then wildlife importance. I swear it's not a bird presentation, but look at that. The painted bunting that's one of the crown jewels of North Texas in the summertime. And that's a bird that depends on the grassland plant communities that we have. So all these different organisms have co-evolved with the grasslands and all the native grasses found in our area. A lot of them are larval hosts for a variety of insects. Any skipper butterfly you see, you can thank a prairie grass, because skipper butterflies rely on the bunch grasses in our area to move on to that next stage of life. They have to eat the grass as a caterpillar to eventually complete that metamorphosis. And those skipper butterflies end up becoming food for so many things, and they're also beautiful to look at. And even if you're a bird that is primarily granivorous, you eat seeds and grains, you still have to feed your young caterpillars. So caterpillars are like the Gerber food for birds. Like everyone's using it. 95% of terrestrial breeding birds feed their young caterpillars. So even if you're a bird like the painted bunting, you prefer to eat seeds, you're still going to feed your young the caterpillars found within that grassland plant community. Unfortunately, a lot of these habitats are disappearing. Like we said before, less than 1% of the prairie remains. And because of that, 53% of all grassland birds are gone, have disappeared since 1970. But we can do something. We can bring more of these grasses back, and maybe some birds will come back. So let's get together, or let's geek out some specific grasses found within our area. Just a special shout out to this grass. It's called prairie cordgrass. If you have an area that stays wet for a lot of the year, that grass will thrive, and it'll spread all over the place, and it'll hold on to that soil. When it is reproducing, though, it gets really, really, really sharp on the leaf blades. So I got a few scars still from playing around with prairie cordgrass, so just disclaimer. So the first four grasses are what we call the big four of the tallgrass prairie. They're the most common, the most dominant plants within the plant community, and they're also very striking and beautiful. This is the big blue stem. It's a warm season perennial bunch grass, which most of them on the list are. Warm season meaning it's growing in the warmest times of the year, spring and summer. It's a perennial because it's long-lived. And it's a bunch grass because it makes a whole bunch of grass. Just a big old clump. Some of the bunch grasses create these rhizomes underneath the ground. Others, these fibrous root systems that new growth come out of. And that's what's also so important for that soil stabilization. But this is one of the warm season perennial bunch grasses. It can be about 8 feet tall. It has a few nicknames. One's the turkey's foot, because if you look at its inflorescence, it's 3-pronged like a turkey's foot. And also the ice cream for cattle. So if there was a fenced operation for cattle to graze, if they find big blue stem on the property, that's what they're going to eat the entire time. And that's also one of the demises, or one of the reasons why big blue stems started to disappear. Because bison evolved with these plants, and there were no fences for the bison. They would munch and keep on going, munch and keep on going. But if there's a fence set up, the cattle will stay towards the favorable plants, and big blue stem's number one. It can thrive in full sun. It prefers to be in full sun, but it can hang out in part shade as well. And over 20 different species of songbird rely on big blue stem for nesting habitat. So grassland-dependent birds, many of them, will make cup nests close to the ground, found within the bunch grass formations, the habits that they form. And this is a preferred grass for a lot of those songbirds. Examples like dick thistles, which is a beautiful bird that's calling all over the place right now. Lark sparrows, that's another one. So many different species of songbird need this grass specifically. And then the little blue stem, number 2 of the big 4. This one's beautiful. Its inflorescence is very different than the big blue stem because it kind of alternates down the stems here. Another warm season perennial bunch grass can be about 6 feet tall. It really changes color throughout the year. It has this beautiful bluish green in the spring and summer during its growing season. And then when it's really a showstopper is in the fall and winter, this beautiful reddish mahogany color. There's tons that are grown in settings to be put in your gardens that have different colors. We have a really deep red one that just showed up at the Audubon Center. Birds probably brought it over. And it's not one that we normally find out in habitat, so I think it was like a cultivar that was created, but it is beautiful. It is awesome. It prefers a drier habitat compared to the big blue. Big blue can handle wet feet for a little bit for certain times of the year, but the little blue does much better in drier habitat. And if you have a limestone, like thin soiled area, that's also a colonizer right here. It'll do really, really well. This is a larval host for tons of skipper butterflies. There are many different species of skipper that we have in Texas, but all of them will flock to the little blue stem. So in turn, birds will flock there too. And then I gotta mention the LeConte sparrow one more time, because it's my favorite bird. But when they're wintering in Texas, this is their number one food source. They love to find prairies and habitats and areas where there's lots of little blue stem, because that seed is their number one food source. That's what they prefer to be around, and their camouflage is perfect for the color that this grass creates in the fall and winter. One more thing about the LeConte sparrow, it's a species of greatest conservation need, so its numbers are plummeting fast. It's not an endangered species, but we don't really know how much are left. But it's not endangered, but we know that they're dwindling. Arguably the prettiest grass. Bob Ross could have painted a prettier picture. This is the yellow Indian grass, another warm season perennial bunch grass, taller than little blue stem, about the same height as big blue. It can thrive in both sun and shade. We have some at the Audubon Center that are just covered up by tons of oak trees, and there's a huge stand of them, just still flowering. They will still flower in that shade. It can be in wet and dry habitat, so there's no preference there. But those bright yellow flowers is really, really makes it the yellow Indian grass. So it being a warm season perennial bunch grass, it'll produce its flowers in the fall, seeds in the winter, and when it's growing, it has this beautiful blue-gray foliage. Oftentimes it can be mistaken for some of the other grasses that are on the list because they look fairly similar in just their growing season before they flower. But a good way to identify it, if you get to the culm where the sheath of the new blade is coming off and you bend it back a little bit, it looks like it has bunny ears, just like this. It's got little bunny ears, and that's how you can identify it. And then this one here, the big blue, towards the base of the grass, there's lots and lots of tiny little fibers that look like hair. So that's another way to identify when it's not flowering. And then number 4 of the big 4, the switchgrass. Another warm season perennial bunch grasses, but this one gets much taller, up to 10 feet tall. And the roots go even deeper. So prairie grasses are famous for those long root systems that help hold on to the soil and all those other benefits. And it can thrive in full sun. And all of the old growth from the year before, these thick stalks that come out of the switchgrass, those are important nesting areas for solitary mining bees. So if you just cut some of those stalks off but leave them there, all of those solitary mining bees will find them, make their little nest inside there, raise their young, and then you have a perfect little colony of pollinators in your own gardens at home, because they're all relying on the old growth from the switchgrass. There's some really powerful pictures online of like a farmer standing next to his last remaining pedestal of switchgrass, and the grass is this much taller than him, and the rest of the topsoil is blown or eroded away. So it's a good example of how much this grass just holds on for dear life to make sure that the soil stays in one spot. I always like to say that in the Blackland Prairie where we are, it's the big 4+1, and this is the +1. This is the eastern gamma grass, another warm season perennial bunch grass, but it can get super tall, 12 feet tall. It thrives in wetter habitats. We find on the edges of prairies and wetlands. It does really, really well in rain gardens. areas where it's going to be standing water for a little bit, and it'll just kind of hold on to it and make sure it doesn't go somewhere else. It's wind pollinated like all the other grasses, but this one, it's been documented that there's species of native bumblebees that love to flock to the flowers because it's an extra food source for them as well. So it doesn't rely on the insects for pollination. It's all wind pollinated. If this was real and I was shaking this flower, you would just see pollen go everywhere. I don't know if anyone's allergic to grass. I probably shouldn't have said that. But bumblebees still love it. They are still attracted to it. And it's our closest relative to corn. So the corn that we cultivate and eat, eastern gamagrass is the closest relative in our area. And it is edible as well. The underside of the leaf blades are kind of thick and sharp, and that's just a fun adaptation where it can thrive in times of drought as well. So that gives off less through transpiration and absorbs more from the atmosphere as well. The state grass, woo! Side oats grandma. I'm from New Jersey, so I say grandma. Some people say grandma. But side oats grandma, it's a warm season perennial bunch grass. Much shorter than the others. It prefers a drier habitat. You can find it in habitat growing next to low blue stem fairly often. And it's called the side oats because when it's flowering, it produces its seeds. They all dangle off the side. Really pretty when it is flowering. Grass flowers are super tiny, but when you get up close, they're gorgeous. And it's the state grass of Texas because it's found in all of those grassland habitats we have in our state. In the tall grass prairies, the short grass prairies, the Chihuahuan Desert. You'll find them in the longleaf pine savannas of East Texas. So this is a very prolific grass found all over the place. And it's also a state grass because it hasn't disappeared from overgrazing. So if cattle really prefer this grass, it doesn't do as much damage as it would to like big blue stem. This grass will just keep coming back. And in fact, it'll even reproduce even more. So it's a very prolific grass and it'll be very, very hard to kill. All right, I had to throw one cool season perennial bunch grass in here. This is the Virginia wild rye. It can be about 4 feet tall and it loves the shade. So if there's any shady spots you'd like to introduce a pretty grass, this one, it really is gorgeous. It does get really sharp because these seeds have barbed awns at the end, but that's just a fun adaptation that it utilizes animals that are walking through the habitat to become hitchhikers. And then when that animal gets to the next part of the habitat, cleans itself, now there's grass growing somewhere else. There is another wild rye that looks very similar, found in open prairie habitat, the Canada wild rye, or also the prairie wild rye. And the way to identify them from one another, other than their habitat preference, the Virginia wild rye's glooms form a C, and the Canada wild rye's glooms form a V. So it should be opposite. That would be easier if it was V for Virginia, C for Canada. Yeah, that's a good way to identify it. So that bird we were looking at earlier, the painted bunting, this is one of its favorite food sources. It's the Texas cupgrass, and it's endemic to just the southern Great Plains, so it's only found within our areas, our ecoregions of Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. It stays pretty small compared to the others, stays pretty short, and all of these grasses, including this one, are really easy to propagate by root division. So this one doesn't have as much of a rhizome feature underneath the ground, but all of these little stalks come out of each individual root. So it's even easier to divvy up and divide by root division. So the Texas cupgrass has this beautiful flowering arrangement that circles down the grass, similar to like a spiranthes orchid, how it just spirals down. That's what the flowers do on this grass. And then it being a warm season perennial bunch grass, it flowers in the spring and summer, and then it creates these seeds. It creates these seeds later on in the year, like in the winter. So all the leftover seeds, when the painted buntings come back, if there's a big stand of it, that's what they're going to go to first. They're going to flock to where all the Texas cupgrass was, and they're going to gobble up all the seeds. You can also bring them to your backyards by introducing millet to your bird feeders. That's another way to attract them. But grasses are really cool, so you could use that. Special shout out to the buffalo grass. So this is a great native grass that can be like a lawn grass or a turf grass. It grows super low, 3 to 12 inches tall, and it will flower throughout the year, just randomly, just periodically. And if flowering, will bring in lots and lots of bugs and birds, and it's a larval host for all those skippers we talked about before. And it doesn't need lots of water, it's very, very drought tolerant, but if you water it a whole bunch, it's not gonna die right away. And it's little to no care, little to no effort, and it can stay green. It'll have some, the flower arrangements look at this beautiful brownish hue, so it adds a little bit of pop of color to the lawn. And It is normally found in the short grass prairies, but every now and again you'll find them in like the edges of the Blackland Prairie where there's short grasses and tall grasses meeting, or the ecotones where two habitats are meeting, so there's a big open space, is where you would find buffalo grass. A good example at the Audubon Center where I work, the buffalo grass thrives on our service trails. So the trails that we only use to walk to get to places quicker, and buffalo grass just took over the whole area. So those are just some of the really awesome grasses that we have in the Blackland Prairie ecoregion. We could go all day long about each individual species, all hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if I respect your time. But there's so many reasons why grasses would be a great addition to gardens at home. I love grass so much. That picture before was from the fun little pocket prairie we created at our house. This is a good example of how beautiful they can be and all the pops of color and texture they can add to your gardens. And I found out not that long ago that in Europe, it's really popular to have an American prairie garden. I was like, wow, look at that. That's pretty cool. Grasses are great to have in your backyard habitat because reduce water usage. As soon as you get them installed and they're on their own, you don't have to water them ever. Just let nature do the rest. Reduce pesticide usage because having these grasses will bring other insects in to gobble up those crop-destroying pests. So these beneficial insects, and then in turn, the birds will show up because they need to rely on the grasses too, and they're going to control your bug population. Also reduces money usage. I'm always down for that. That's awesome. Really important for your soil health. They're holding on to the soil. They're giving space for other organisms to thrive and add to those nutrients. And then again, the name of the game is diversity. And by adding these native grasses, so many other organisms are going to show up. Long grass is a true food desert. The more that they're cut, the less the root systems can grow. So if you have a long grass like buffalo grass, you don't have to really be cut because it's only 3 to 12 inches tall, and the roots continue to grow. And you can always ask for native plants at your local nursery. I know there's a bunch of options. And the Texas Conservation Alliance always has some cool plants for sale. Shout out to them. Shout out to my friend Gary, Texas Conservation Alliance. But I know Redentas has some great options. My coworker Nathan used to work at Redentas, and he loves Redentas. And there's so many other places in Dallas where there's lots of great options. I think native plants are much more popular. And here's just some grasslands around Dallas. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, but here's some options if you want to go out and explore and see what plants are growing out in habitat. This is at the Audubon Center. It's a fun picture. The Climber Meadow, we mentioned before. I think it's by appointment only, where they have a few open days to the public. One of the other pictures was Cedar Hill State Park, another great prairie at the Talala Trailhead. The Kachina Prairie in Ennis is remarkable. It's right outside of a housing development, and I think it's also like a small little remnant prairie that the Indian Trail Master Naturalists manage. And there's a trail that loops around the plant community, it goes into the woods. They do bluebonnet walks, they do walks all the time with all the native wildflowers blooming out there. The Connemara Meadow Nature Preserve, a lot of the volunteers at the Audubon Center also volunteer up there, good friends of ours. And then White Rock Lake has some really beautiful prairie plant communities too. And of course, TRAC, Trinity River Audubon Center. And we're always looking for more volunteers to come help with our habitat restoration, our habitat management, the management of our pollinator gardens and our pocket prairies and our parking lot gardens too. So if you'd like to volunteer, Dylan, our summer intern in the back, has some business cards and some more information about the Audubon Center. And we always love to have more friends and new friends come out and join us. And thank you. There you go. Thank you. Yes.
You had like a ranch that had like 50 acres on it, and you were wanting to incorporate more grasses. What would be the best way to do that?
For a large-scale operation, I guess it all depends on the different, what approach you'd like to take. A lot of people will do like they till it up and then reseed. There's also no-till drills where you kind of cut like the sod of what's underneath so it exposes the soil, and then you no-till drill all the seeds in there. But if you want to separate it plot by plot, what we did for our really small property was through solarization. Just put down a bunch of tarps and plastic and cardboard and let the sun kill everything off. And then once the soil was exposed, we just seeded everything. And you could do that plot by plot, but also having plugs of plants already there, just mow and plant, mow and plant, mow and plant, and things will start to outcompete.
Where did you get the seeds?
Seed source is a good option. Native American seed. They have tons of seed mixes. Some that are just for the Blackland Prairie, so it's grasses and forbs. There's a really great seed mix we use at work, the Eastern Savannah Grass Starter, where it has all those grasses we just mentioned, plus lots of other miscellaneous grasses. So for sowing grass seeds, spring is the best time. But for wildflowers and grasses, fall will be good.
Once you have the grasses out there with the forbs and everything, what is your schedule for maintenance?
Yeah, so a rotational mowing would work, unless you already have cattle or animals that could do the job, and have them rotate. So rest and mow. And so I would wait a year or two before you do it again, but also timing. So if there's any grassland birds there, ones that would be nesting, like dickcissels, kingbirds, wait until the young birds fledge and are able to fly around to avoid the mower. So like August, end of July, August, you can mow. And then after that, let that rest for a year or two, and then go to the next spot, and mow in the end of fall or early winter. So after monarch migration happens, so all those flowering forbs and grasses are still available for all the different organisms, and you can just cut them down and let the new growth come up in the spring.
So you're saying then that you would mow once or twice a year, or every other year?
Exactly, yeah. Then just at least there's 50% of habitat at all times. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah.
Do you have to mow?
You don't have to. Some people prefer not to, and it's just removing invasive species manually, and just let animals do the rest. So some things will come and munch on it if there's deer nearby, or deer will not eat certain plants on here. Another great addition is that some of these plants are deer resistant. But mowing is also a good alternative to having animals maintain it or having a prescribed burn. It can remove all that old growth and stimulate new.
Is there a shade alternative for lawn?
Shade. I think at the Laura Bush Native Garden in Dallas, I think they have blue grama and curly mesquite in their lawn mix, and it does pretty well in the shade for some of those too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I love your term pocket prairie.
Thank you.
I have a pocket prairie. It's about 1.5 acres of just native prairie. And it seems like recently it's being overtaken. I think I have the little blue stem mostly, lots of stuff, but that mostly. I loved it. It was beautiful. But lately it seems like it's being overtaken by what I have self-identified as that King Ranch blue stem.
Yeah.
Which is just awful. Is there anything I can do about that?
With King Ranch, I know there's always different opinions on herbicide. We have a few herbicides that I avoid it, but unless you really need to have a doctor's, prescription, then it's time to herbicide, yeah. So certain things I will have to herbicide, and that's one, because it'd be really difficult to always get out all the rootstock.
Well, I mean, it's just mixed in. It just kind of has come up naturally.
Yeah.
I don't see anything actually. Never have. It's just all natural.
We created it was pretty easy. It was like an old PVC pipe with a little sponge that we can use as a very selective herbicide wand when we walk around to just paint the stuff we don't want. Sometimes it's fun just frolicking in the prairie like this. Wear long sleeves.
Is that happening with a lot of the natural prairies? Is that King Ranch taking over?
In a lot of the prairie restoration areas, yes. So at the Audubon Center, our restoration is forever ongoing. There's lots of invasive species there. It's always going to be that way. But we try to combat it by removing and maintaining what we currently have that is native and just introducing more natives to outcompete them. So another opinion some people have, some people don't. I think Maximilian sunflower is a great thing to introduce because it can start to spread things out and push out some of the others. Eastern gamma grass, another great restoration grass because it can outcompete some things. Broom's edge blue stem is another good option. Silver blue stem does really well, and then Texas winter grass. Once you get that established, it'll just start to compete with everything else too.
Do you have to deal with American bindweed ever competing with your grasses, and how do you deal with that?
We do, and we'll just start pulling. A lot of our volunteer opportunities are just getting out in habitat and pulling stuff.
By the surface, or do they try to get down? And is it just like a haircut every so often, and they just
pretty much, yeah, just maintaining. Yeah. Our number one enemy this year is hairy vetch. That's our number one invasive species. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's nitrogen fixing, it's a lagoon, but it can just blanket over all the other plants and just suffocate them. So we're just trying to remove that as much as possible because, again, diversity is the most important thing. We can't just have one plant growing out there because then all the birds would leave and that would be it.
The 53% of the grassland birds that have left, where did they go? Are any extinct?
A lot of them, unfortunately, just passed away and are now endangered. There are some grassland birds that are critically imperiled. None that are extinct I can think of right away, like from 1970. But some that are like really at risk from habitat loss and also climate change. A major one that we're seeing is the Atwater's prairie chicken. That bird, there's only like 30 or 40 left in the wild. And there's a wildlife refuge in Southeast Texas. It's beautiful. It's called the Atwater Prairie Chicken National Wildlife Refuge. And the whole management team, their job is to keep that bird alive. It's just trying to make sure that the prairie doesn't go extinct. Yeah. It's a subspecies of the lesser prairie chicken.
On that King Ranch grass, our neighbors, the house hadn't been, the lawn landscape hadn't been kept up, and it started to come up, and I told them what it was, and I said, I think the only thing you can do is pull it, and they got out and they pulled it and they pulled it and they pulled it, and it was the whole parkway, and honest to God, they don't have it this year.
That's awesome.
And I mean, so I'm not sure you need a herbicide. I was thinking maybe you could seed in some little blue stem once you've pulled it or something, you know.
That's a good point.
To sort of fill in the spaces so it didn't have a chance to come back.
I love that they did it successfully. That's awesome. Because that's a tough plant.
It was something to see, honest to God. The whole family out there on their hands and knees.
That's awesome. Dedication. Dedication. And then good point, because there's a partner we work with that's in the Audubon Conservation Ranching Network. It's a partnership with ranchers where they bring their landscape back to the native landscape for cattle and for wildlife. We went to one of their properties in Grandview. Beautiful, immaculate. And I asked, like, you know, what was it like before? And it was all introduced grasses. And he said a lot of it, he just let the cattle go wild, let them eat everything up, and he would just sow seed behind and let the cattle stomp everything down, and it worked. So, pretty cool.
I have one more thing. I've been trying to do this homegrown national park deal. And so the native seed place, the one down by Fredericksburg, he told me to stomp it in the fall, little blue stem. And if you could have seen me out there stomping in,
Oh, yeah.
not breaking, not, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, nothing. And he said, and don't water it because it will rot.
Yep.
And so all it had was my stomping, and I never saw any of it. And I just keep looking there, thinking, isn't that one little blue stem? One little blue stem?
It might come back up because they can stay viable for a number of years.
Okay.
And,
Well, I think I'm going to try watering.
There we go. Grasses are really hard to grow from seed, certain species. And there's been tons that we got started in our greenhouse, and I'm all excited, and then all of a sudden they all just died. I'm like, oh, darn. So some are easier than others, but little blue stems have been pretty difficult.
Oh.
Is there such a thing as a small grass that's not invasive on city lots?
Like a small grass, like a small native grass found in a city lot nearby?
Well, something for our yard size, city-size yard.
Yeah.
But something like in inland sea oats, but not invasive.
Inland sea oats spreads like wildfire.
Yeah. So is there anything that would not be invasive that would be beneficial?
Would it be like in the shade as well?
Yes.
I think Virginia wild rye does pretty well, and it'll stay, contained for a little bit compared to inland sea oats.
A little bit?
Yeah. Won't spread as much. It's well behaved. It won't spread as much. But it can create a colony. Yeah.
Virginia, why?
Wild rye, yeah. But they do have those sharp glooms. And just always want to let people know, like, if like a dog walk
Squirrels
by.
might leave them alone.
That for sure, yeah.
I'm involved with Austin College in Sherman, Texas, and Dr. Diggs there created a Blackland Prairie project that's part of the curriculum. I'm wondering if other colleges, universities are supporting that movement. It was fascinating, to go out and see what they had done, with,
Yeah.
you know, it's near Denison, you know, out
Yeah.
in the Blackland Prairie.
Austin College is awesome. Dr. Dick is awesome. So cool. And we work with a few local universities, the UTD being one of them, UNT, Paul Quinn, where students come out and learn about prairie ecology, and they assist with our habitat restoration. So they're helping at track specifically. I'm not sure if there's any other big programs like the one at Austin College, or they're out and about. I hope so. I think TCU has a really great program too. UNT does help at Layla, the Lake Louisville or Louisville Lake Farm Learning Area, and they have some professors that bring students out there to help too.
Are you going to be around afterwards to answer questions?
Sure, yeah. I do have to get back by 1:30, so I can stay for a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. The Texas Master Gardener Emerita is an honorary title awarded to a retired volunteer who has served the Extension Master Gardener program with distinction. Nominees for Emerita status should be retired Texas Master Gardeners who were in good standing upon retirement, preferably with 5 or more service years. After a distinguished career as a librarian, Nita Rausch completed the Master Gardener School in Dallas County in 2007. She eagerly jumped into many key roles among the volunteer opportunities that the Master Gardener program offers. Among her many significant contributions to the program, Nita has served as head of the Speakers Bureau, training many of our speakers and reaching out to the community to book presentations throughout Dallas and beyond. She also served as head of the Hospitality Committee and was coordinator for Master Gardener School for several years. She received the President's Volunteer Service Award after completing 4,000 hours of service and had over 8,000 hours of service upon retirement. It is because of her exemplary service in so many roles that she has been granted the Texas Master Gardener Emerita status. Nita, we are so proud to have you as a member of our group. Fellow Master Gardeners, please join me in congratulating Nita for receiving this well-deserved award, which I will show you. And she gets a special pin that we will trade you for.
Each year that our association has held a garden tour, the tour has grown, and it has built on the success of the previous years. But this year, the garden tour grew like bamboo in your backyard or like mint in your herb garden. Under the very capable leadership of 4 members of the class of 2024, the 2022, the 24 tour surpassed all expectations. It became a 5-star, high-tech Dallas event. The sponsorship goal was exceeded by 50%. The ticket sales goal was exceeded by 60%. The robust silent auction, which featured over 30 items, exceeded its goal by 240%. Pretty impressive. The tour is not only the biggest fundraiser for the Dallas County Master Gardener Association, but additionally it showcases how talented Master Gardeners are able to create beautiful gardens using the best horticultural practices. It additionally exposes our community to superior information from super educators. And the success of this event certainly represents hours of planning, organizing, soliciting, creating, and I am absolutely sure those four ladies worried a lot about the weather. So today we're happy to honor our four coordinators of the 2024 Garden Tour, Chris Geyer, Margaret Renitsky, Christy Lawrence, and Elaine Webster with the Making a Difference Award. And we want to thank them for making all of us look really good. So congratulations, guys. Everybody give them another hand.
Yes, so it is a wrap. The tour is a wrap. And I have to say, it was a great day in the gardens. I mean, it was so much sharing. The guests all just thoroughly seemed to enjoy being there, enjoyed the gardens, enjoyed meeting all of the volunteers, everybody. It had such great feedback. And the educators, just a wonderful, wonderful day. So anyway, so we are in the midst of wrapping up the tour. So anyway, we really, really wanted to thank all of the volunteers. I mean, I counted up how many volunteers we had participating in this event, and there were at least 160. And I'm sure that there's lots more of y'all that weren't official volunteers that helped out in some way, shape, or form. Even if it was advisory, we were asking questions on how do I do this? What do you recommend for this? But anyway, just really, really, it takes a village to put on a really great event. And this really was everybody going in together to do it. And like I said, there was so much knowledge sharing, wonderful interactions with the guests. I mean, it's just really great to see. We estimated that we had over 1,000 guests in the gardens. And then along with, I think there were about 125 volunteers that were in the gardens at the same time. And it was kind of hard. We also had Soap Trail and the bathhouse where people were just kind of wandering in as they were, there for biking or walking or something, and went, oh, what's going on here? And stopped and just saw those gardens. So we touched a lot of people, which was really what our goal was with this garden tour, was to touch people and, share our knowledge. So I really feel like we did that. Like I said, we are in the midst now of wrapping up and putting together, there's a lot of great things that happen with the tour. There's also some things that, we can work on. So we are putting together, we're compiling our notes on things that we felt that we should pass on to the next tour. And we will be organizing that before we pass it on so that it makes sense. But we also would like, if you have any feedback you'd like to provide, just provide it to any of us or any of the garden captains or the owners too. It'll get to us. But we do want to make sure that we really look at what we did and make sure there's, we're doing the best things that we could do going forward, and that we keep doing the things that worked really, really well. I also want to say a very special thanks to our advisor. Where's Nancy Black? Are you here? Nancy, stand up. Yes. So Nancy was chair of the last tour, and she was our advisor for this tour and was a wonderful wealth of information, along with all of the other tour chairs from the last one. But Nancy came to a lot of our meetings and really helped us guide us through the process. So we really do appreciate that. I'm just going to have a few slides of thank yous because we just have to. It's just so much that went into this. We started working on this project over a year ago, and we selected the gardens. It was probably in June is when we selected the gardens. So, we've been working behind the scenes for quite some time. But our garden owners, a couple of them are here. Jennifer Bowers and Cynthia Assisio, I know you guys are here. Yeah, yes, beautiful garden. So their garden is a very fun garden, but they're also very educational. They had little monarch butterflies, that they had printed labels next to their plants that attract those butterflies. They had caterpillars. They had some really cool, Dina Peterson also had some really cool educational things going on there. But it also a fun garden and a lot of natives. So each of our gardens, one of the biggest thing was that they're all very unique. They're wonderful, but they're all very unique. So people saw a lot of different things when they came to the garden tour. Nancy Griswold's garden was a vegetable garden mixed in with pollinators. And it's just a joy of a garden. Vera Gillen's had the Cochica. She also uses her alleyway that she has raised vegetable beds, and it's just amazing property. Monica Nagel's garden is another amazing terraced one that goes along the parkland, and she utilizes that parkland. Susie Renz is also along a nature area, along a waterway, and she's got another terrace garden that is just, it's over the top crazy how much she has in there and how much work has gone into that garden. And the Maggie Saucedo and Janet Smith's are both pollinator gardens. The Maggie Saucedo's is a Sopak trailhead. And that garden has just, I don't think it's very old, but it has just blossomed with their pollinators. And Janet Smith's home garden is just a pleasure to drive by and look at. We have that as a drive-by, but everybody was stopping and going and wandering through her garden. And she was very, where is Janet at? Janet's here too, isn't she? There she is, Janet's in the back, yes. And she also leads the bathhouse garden too. She, the creator, manager, leader of the bathhouse. Another wonderful garden. And then the garden captains. This role, these ladies just kind of took it on, and they took it up to another level also. Master communicators, master organizers, yes, all of them. So we had Leslie Dinsmore, Marilyn Hill, Janet Lynn, Kathy Lyon, Glenn McGee, Cindy Patrick, Paula Spletter, and Ruby Watson. And I should have done this. Y'all stand if y'all are here. Y'all stand. Ruby. These folks did a wonderful job. And since I didn't do that, any of the owners that are here or the garden managers, will you please stand? Janet, Cynthia, thank you, ladies. And then a thank you to all of our garden volunteers. And again, I think there's 125 that worked in the gardens, either doing prep work or working the gardens at the event of the day. And it's just, everybody, it was just a wonderful day. The volunteers were all so helpful, friendly, and it was just a pleasure. And I kind of roamed garden to garden, so I got to see everybody, so it's kind of fun. So, 2 big long pages of all of the volunteers that were there. And then the thank you to our garden prep volunteers. These are the folks that helped out with the garden owners ahead of time and did a lot of mulching and weeding and pruning and making those gardens look beautiful. And then our garden educators, and I also have a lot of compliments on our educators. And there were just, great things happening all over the place. Whether Vera, the Gillen garden had a birder there, and her birds were going crazy during his presentation. It was just wonderful because you actually saw what they were talking about. But just a lot of good knowledge sharing going on. And if you're an educator, will you please stand? Because quite a few were master gardeners. So Nadina's here. Of experts, y'all could earn money on the speaker. What do you call it? The speaker. Yeah. Well, speaker bureau, but if you were doing it out professionally, just amazing. So thank you. And then we also had behind the scenes. We had Sandy Means Bannon, Neil Howard, Shay Mayberry, Zandra Harris, Sandra Ferris, Cynthia Jones, Alexa Peterson, and Marty Slokin. Can you all stand if you're here? So these folks did a lot of the, like I said, the behind the scenes, a lot of the computer work. the high-tech piece of it that we don't know anything about. Doing the social media, but also making sure that the ticket sales, that everything. The one thing we really wanted was to make sure we had our tickets available on our website up at the top of the main page where people could just go to that website and click on it. And Cynthia and all the other folks have made that happen. And now our plant lists are out there, so y'all go out and check that out. That logo's still out there, and underneath there it says to see the plant lists. And I don't know if y'all saw those, but Margaret Bianski put together the plant lists with the help of the gardeners. Yes. And she's got pictures of each of the plants, and it's very organized, and they kind of flip. So you can go to each garden and you can see all of the plants that are at the gardens and read about them. So it's just a really nice encyclopedia of plants, really. So we have that now, as a guide to go forward. So that was beautiful. That is out there also on the website. And we also will have to figure out how to get the pictures. My pictures did not load to come to the presentation. I don't have any pictures of the gardens. Everybody looks so great in their green t-shirts. Next meeting, yes. But we will figure out how to share the pictures from the gardens. And then to our sponsors, like I said, we did exceed our sponsorship goal by a bit. Maybe we set our goals too low. But we were basing off of the last tour, plus we were only a one-day tour versus 2 days. And then also prices have gone up, so we didn't want to also overextend ourselves where we could, promise more than what we could bring in. But anyway, sponsors really came through. Most of the major, the main garden centers, our partners came through, some of the banks, and then just, a plethora of people. Most people that we asked said yes. So it was just really nice to see. Especially when they heard what all we did, and the answer back was always, "Oh my goodness, you all do all of this?" So as far as fundraising, recap. This is not final. This is preliminary. We haven't had time to get everything put together. But as far as the fundraising piece goes, our total revenues ended up being about $41,000.
Wow.
Okay, so which is. Our costs will be about $7,000, so we're probably at about $34,000. We may be higher than that, but I don't want to overstate. But we're at least at $34,000 all in, which is a nice number. We do still have T-shirts for sale, so if you'd like to buy a T-shirt, see Denise out front, okay? Because there are some left. They're $20 each, and also she said there are 4 worker bee T-shirts left. So if you want one of those are going fast. So I got to get one. And then as far as the sales go, as far as the guests coming in, this chart here shows anything that was sold on our online. We also had some cash sales. We had 45 cash and credit card sales. So that 868 tickles. That 868 tickets, we sold 913 tickets to the event. So that's where we ended up. My goal was 1,000. Our team goals. We really wanted to get to 1,000. Didn't quite make it, but we came very close. So, but all in all, just very, very nice day. And to leave you with this, we did all this we had a few snafus along the way, personally.
Wow.
Our group I don't know, it was just a crazy year. And I'll tell you, if we wouldn't have had each other to support each other, I think it would have been really hard. But we all got COVID at the same time. And a couple of us got it pretty bad. My daughter got married. So we had a wedding to plan and do. We had multiple mothers in the hospital and rehab overseeing. Oh, and spouse also, yes. Open heart surgery. And broken arm. We had moving daughter to and from dorm. We sold a mom's house and moved her to Dallas. We had a large cornea abrasion. We got rained out for preview day, but we figured that out and did it the next morning. Not everybody got to come, but it was wonderful for the folks that were able to come. So, and there was lots more. We had a black widow that showed up at one of the houses. That was interesting. Yes, but it laid babies right at Monica's house. Yeah, hundreds of babies, baby widows. What else any other, there were lots of things, but just wanted to leave you with that. But you can't keep your garden team down. We kept going, and there we are. We're still standing. Thank you all very much. It really was an honor and a pleasure on all of our part to do this for the organization.
Okay, time for the raffle. We have the plants down here. They were hand selected by Keaton down from Texas Discovery Garden. I believe that is it. So thank you all for coming. The next meeting is at the Arboretum, and you do not need to be a member to attend, so please join us.